Welcome back, passengers. This is your pilot speaking. My name is David Hensley. I'm the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am joined tonight by my two co-pilots,
Cara Hayes,
Robert Bradford.
And we are continuing our Lost 20-year retrospective by discussing episodes 12 through 15. So that's Whatever the Case May Be, Hearts and Minds, Special, and Homecoming. And guys, guess what today is?
October 13th.
Yeah, the 20th anniversary of the episode Walkabout.
Okay.
Wow.
Yep. I saw that on Reddit just a little bit ago and went, well, that's worth a mention.
Yeah.
But we're going to kick off tonight's discussion with Season 1, Episode 12, Whatever the Case May Be, which is a Kate-centric episode that Robert has a lot of hard feelings about that's going to be funny. It takes place on days 21 through 22, which is a 5-day time skip from the previous episode, which I think is interesting. That Claire's been missing a full 5 days, and it just seems like life has kind of gone on.
Yeah, I guess maybe for those first 4 days, everybody was like, there are people in the jungle who are going to come and kidnap us. Let's all huddle together and hide, staring out into the darkness in terror. And day 5, everyone's like, all right, let's, wander around. Jen can go off to fish, and, Kate can go hiking to pick seeds, and, just...
I mean, you do get complacent after. I mean, if you go that many days without, being attacked or stalked or kidnapped or anything like that, you just go, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about.
Yeah.
The first note that I took here, I just thought was interesting because I noticed that Kate's messenger bag that she's carrying around with her is being held together with a seatbelt.
I had not noticed that, but that's a really cool touch.
Yeah.
I saw that, and let me tell you, I want one, but I'm also a bag whore, so...
We've heard that about you. Did anyone else think it's funny that this episode seems to have been sponsored by Halliburton?
I meant to look it up if that was just a random, corporate seeming name, because I was like, okay, this is 2004. Dick Cheney, Vice President of the United States. Halliburton was in the news. Did they make suitcases? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that actually was a real, product placement.
Huh.
Yeah, depending on what section of the internet you ask, Halliburton is also responsible for all kinds of conspiracy theories as well.
That is true.
Yeah, no, that part I knew about. It was actually that I knew them more for as kind of a stand-in for generic evil corporation and not for an actual business or service that they provided.
Well, that is why their suitcases are impenetrable. As the episode tells us, you would need a bomb. What is it that... Michael tells...
Impact velocity.
Yeah.
Or an axe or a sledgehammer.
Yeah. Even Hurley gets in on the action and walks by and he's like, Halliburton, you're not breaking into that. And I was like, oh, come on.
I fully believe that Hurley had no idea what Michael was talking about, but wanted to be in on the joke, so he just kind of faked it and was like, oh, yeah, Halliburton. Ridiculous. What? What is that?
I would get on board with that. I get on board at this point with anything that Hurley does.
Yeah.
Hurley is like the shining light of every episode that he gets something to do in. And every episode that he's not in, there's a noticeable lack of Hurley, unfortunately.
Whenever Hurley's not around, all the other characters should be asking, where's Hurley?
That's the quote that I was trying to get to in my head, and I was like, oh no, I can't run off any more episode time trying to remember the full quote. So thank you for that alley-oop there, Robert.
You're welcome.
I feel like we're just sort of running through the episode now, talking about what I thought were the highlights of it. But at one point, Sawyer is trying to get the case open using velocity and impact. And he climbs up these vines onto a little cliff, tosses the Halliburton case down on a rock. It doesn't open, but here comes Kate, scurrying out of the woods to grab it, and I thought that was so unintentionally hilarious.
She should have actually shouted yoink as she got it.
That's the word I had in my head.
Yeah,
Yoink.
that's the only thing that could have made it better, because there's not even anything graceful about it. She just literally, that's the only word I could come up with, scurries out of the woods, grabs the case, and runs off with it. Sawyer has to shimmy down the vine and go after her, which leads to... our next topic, which is Jungle Run Watch.
Which he does, Josh Holloway, he moves with purpose. He's just he's on a track.
Yeah, we've seen plenty of jungle running from Kate. This is, I think, our first jungle run from Sawyer.
I think you're right, yeah.
And I just want to keep the jungle run watch going after last week and realizing just how much of that there is. Because it's going to come back later. There's going to be at least one more jungle run watch in this episode of Long Walk Talks.
We should have scores, just like rate out of 10 for how each of the characters does with that.
Well, yeah, let's come up with that between episodes. How are we going to judge our Losties and their jungle running skills?
I'll build a spreadsheet, list some criteria, and just, we can rank.
Oh, you'll have a rubric.
Exactly.
Awesome. I live by those now.
Well, Robert, talk to us a little bit about Bank Management 101. So let's set the scene here. This is Kate's second episode. And to me, this is the episode where I think it had become clear that the writers didn't expect to have to milk this gimmick as much as they were going to. So it's like, oh, shit, we have to tell more about Kate. We have already established that she was a criminal and that she's on the run, that U.S. Marshals were after her. Now we can establish what she did. And not to spoil anything, but later, I think there's an episode called What Kate Did.
I think it's season 3 when they actually have that.
Yeah. So we get another flashback that reveals that Kate isn't just on the run. She is a criminal mastermind and action movie heroine.
Yeah, that she has recruited a group of
Dum-dums.
Yeah, of just bank thugs to rob a bank because she wants something that's inside. But she goes in posing as just someone looking to open it or to fill out a loan application, and just, oh no, there's a robbery, and she ends up helping when one of the other customers tries to fight back against the robbers, and then we find out that, oh yeah, she's in on the whole thing. But yes, David, thank you for asking. So there's a whole sequence here where the guy's got a gun pointed at the bank manager, and he's like, open the money cage, open the vault so I can get into where the cash is. And the bank manager replies, no, you're just going to kill me anyway. I've talked about things that I am not an expert in and things that I don't know too much about. I do know something about bank management because I work in banking in my day job. I am the manager for a bank branch. Not huge, not a lot of foot traffic, but like anybody who's worked in banking, I've had training on what you do if you are ever in a robbery situation. And they do not tell you, assume you're dead and don't cooperate. That's not a helpful thing. Most bank robbers aren't looking to kill people. They want money. And that's why when you're being trained on this, they tell you, get them out of the building as quickly as possible without anybody getting hurt. The fastest and safest way to do that is to cooperate. Give them what they want. The money is federally insured. If all of your customers are dead on the floor with bullets in their heads, but your money's still safe in the vault, the bank does not consider that a win. So what they're doing is the kind of the classic sequence that, is the, give me what I want or I'll kill your girlfriend or I'll kill your son. And, it's a sturdy trope. It's a classic. 24 did it like 6 times a season, but with 24, it was always something like, give me the nuclear launch codes or I'll kill your child, or, open the door of the president's bunker or I'll kill your mother. And, there it works because the person who's being forced to make the choice has okay, do I save one person in front of me or do I endanger a bunch of other lives? It's a trolley problem. It's really stupid when it's someone whose whole thing is, I don't want anyone to get hurt, so let me give you what you want. And they try to play it like he would be all torn. And, at one point the guy points the gun at Kate and she's like, no, don't do it. Which, again, it's money. The bank can get more of it. Like the federal government has entire programs to reimburse banks for these kinds of scenarios. It's the reason the FBI investigates bank robberies. It's so stupid. And normally I'm not someone who needs TV to be hyper realistic. Like, I don't mind if, cops don't follow like actual police procedure, or if, I don't look at Jack's episodes and be like, this may not be totally scrupulously accurate to how surgeons behave. But in this case, it's so dumb, and it's just kind of emblematic of the whole episode, which just requires everybody to act like an idiot for drama. And the payoff at the end, like, if you have a scene where Jack is in surgery and they're making up a bunch of medical technobabble, But to get to a dramatic scene where Jack has to make a choice and we're like, oh, he's got the weight of this person's life in his hands, or this plays into his relationship with his dad. With Kate, it's just stupid because the whole thing comes down to jumping to the end. She wants a toy airplane. She's doing all this to get a toy airplane. She has recruited multiple people who ran into a bank with loaded guns, and she's like, oh, you said no one was going to get hurt. Well, Kate, you sent armed robbers into a building. There was a good chance someone was going to get hurt.
You sent dumb armed robbers into a building because when they actually get into the vault, the first thing the lead guy does is take off his mask and say what he thinks is Kate's real name. She's given him a fake name, and then makes it pretty clear that because now the bank manager has seen his face, he basically used this as an excuse to, oh, now I got to kill him, which turns Kate into the aforementioned action movie heroine because suddenly she's dual wielding pistols and shooting folks.
She gets her Lara Croft on.
I agree. Everything about this subplot is dumb. I don't think the writers knew that they were going to have to give Kate another flashback, at least so soon.
It felt like they had kind of an ending of where they wanted it to go. Like she's trying to retrieve something that has deep sentimental value to it. But they needed to fit it across like 5 flashback segments, and they couldn't figure out how to do like 5 different stages of drama. So they're just like a pointless thing where the bank manager just won't cooperate for some reason, and that gets us through like 3 of her flashback segments. Because, yeah, then once they're in the vault, that's kind of the end of it.
Yeah. Now, remind me, she opens the safety deposit box and takes out the airplane while they're all still present, right?
So all 3 of the robbers are down with non-lethal bullet wounds, shot in the leg and shot in the arm. They're still lying on the ground holding loaded guns, but, you know, fair is fair. And once you've been wounded, you're not allowed to shoot a gun anymore.
No.
It's just...
That's how that works.
You've been tagged. You're out.
Yeah, and Kate makes it a point to set down both of her guns. But if I were one of either the bank manager or one of those robbers who saw her take out a plastic airplane, there would have been a what the fuck moment there.
In their defense, she just takes out an envelope from the box. We don't see what's inside the envelope until she opens the case with Jack on the island.
That's right. Thank you for that.
And okay, look, all the craziness of the logistics of that aside, I do think it's interesting that this batch of episodes gets into 2 of the big flaws that Lost as a series does kind of run into. One of them is the tendency to introduce a mystery, in this case, what's in this case and why does Kate care so much about it, and have the resolution of that be another mystery. That, you know, when she gets this airplane, she has her, you know, Chinatown moment with Jack where he's like, who did it belong to? Belonged to someone I loved. Who did it belong to? It belonged to someone I killed. My father, my sister, my mother. Yeah,
He's someone that I loved and that I killed.
Right, but it's just like at the end, it's supposed to be like, oh, so now we want to know what the plane is all about. And it is a problem that Lost would run into, where they would just introduce you to something that's just an arrow pointing to somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of emotional payoff in that. And honestly, I think, depending on whether you think that's what the show ultimately did in its finale, I think that accounts for a lot of whether somebody loves or hates how the show ended. But... yeah, I get why this episode gets so much grief from people.
Well, and this is a mystery that they do pay off because we do find out the secret of the airplane and who Kate killed, quote unquote, later. And I think what Kate did, the episode title, What Kate Did, and it is not satisfactory when we get there. He's a childhood boyfriend that she reunites with, and he had a plane.
Well, that one I think we find out sooner, because that's like, cause he's not the guy she was on the run for killing. She was already on the run, and he gets like caught in the crossfire. Because spoiler, but what Kate did was I think she killed her mom, or her mom's abusive husband.
That's right.
Which is about the most sympathetic murder you can commit in television, is killing either someone who's abusive to you or abusive to someone you love. Which, my kind of question is, do you guys think it would have been better if they actually had Kate do something that was genuinely hard to forgive? That, like, if she actually had just, you know, like, because her implication with Jack is that she killed someone and she regrets it, and that's why, and that's part of her torment. And in the end, you know, we find out that the guy who owned the plane died just not because he was close to her, but she didn't directly kill him. And then the guy that she actually murdered to go on the run, she seems to have no real regrets about. So, like, if it had been a case where she just, like, had killed him in, I don't know, some way that was actually hard for her to reckon with, that left her with a real feeling of responsibility, that it wasn't something the audience would just forgive, I don't know, would that have been more interesting?
I don't think network television was ready for that kind of moral quandary in 2004. Nowadays, discussion forums would be going crazy with, but he did this also, and now maybe we could get away with that sort of thing. In 2004, no. I think as many of these needed to be softball answers as possible.
Admittedly, it's also, as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, well, they've already got, a criminal who's genuinely done bad things in the past trying to make good on the island in the character of Sawyer, so... Yeah, they've also got to take Kate in a different direction. They were in a bit of a tight spot there.
Even Sawyer's is kind of a softball answer, though, because we're led to believe that he's responsible for a man killing his wife and then himself and leaving his child an orphan. But we find out he didn't actually do that. He walked away from the con, giving us some sympathy points for Sawyer. So even that is like not so hardcore that you're like, oh, wow, this is a really morally gray area.
Well, remember, we got another flashback of his coming up where we find out what he was doing in Australia, and that does actually...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it wasn't like back in his original origin story, but he does have a non-sympathetic murder in his past.
Yeah. Sawyer killed a guy.
So everybody on this plane's a murderer, basically.
In his defense, Robert Patrick told him to, and I mean, I would have gone with that.
If Robert Patrick told me to do something, I'd 100% do it.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know about that. I saw the first season of Peacemaker. He was a piece of shit on that show. I think this is a good time to point out, since we spent so long on the toy airplane of it all, that we decided we were going to start theming the dinner that we eat every week to whatever the episodes are themed around. And we looked at this batch and we're like, oh, man, I don't know. We can have like some, we've got a Boone and Shannon episode coming up, so we could have some good old Americana. Or then Robert brought up the point of, well, this is a episode about a plane. Why not wings? So thank you, Chex in Rock Hill, for providing us with some very delicious wings. And I think next week we decided we're doing barbecue because we get another Sawyer episode.
And he's chasing a boar.
Yeah. So we'll try to remember to keep everything themed and let our listening audience in on that. So we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about the first hint of a budding relationship between Sayid and Shannon. How do we feel about this completely natural, not at all forced romance between the two of them?
I hate it.
We can get into this a little more when we talk about the next episode, but I think there was the potential for something really interesting there. It's not what they ended up doing. What they ended up doing was, oh, they really are in love, and it's tragic that they are separated on the island, which I don't think anybody really bought. Yeah, again, I get where Shannon's coming from. Like, Saeed's a good dude, and he's, like...
Good looking.
Yeah, like, I would want to just be around that guy at all times, just because I'm like, my chances of getting killed by something on here seem a lot lessened when I'm next to, like, the, electronic genius trained soldier.
He could have done better.
I think it'd be a little more forgivable if the entirety of Saeed's interest in Shannon amounted to a boner, because she is Maggie Grace.
Right.
She's attractive, and they've been on the island for 3 weeks.
And she spent a lot of that time lying on the beach in a bikini, so...
Yeah. Instead, they really they go a long way to make Sayid interested in Shannon, despite the fact that what does Sayid see in Shannon? Anyway, boobs. Yeah, maybe that's just me being, sexist. I don't know. Real quick, I'll mention that we're starting to do the numbers watch as well. We got too many watches on the show.
You have to, though.
Yeah, I think so.
This was a very Easter egg heavy show. Like, there were a lot of things that rewarded those freeze frames and rewatches.
Yeah, and it's going to come up again later, but the safety deposit box number is 815, 815, same as the flight number, and those are some of Hurley's numbers, which I think we'll get into next week on the next batch of episodes. I wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way so that I could say, Cara, What is it that you hate so much about Shannon Rutherford?
Oh God, I don't know. I hate every inch of her on the show. I don't know. She's useless. As Boone told her. I don't know. I hate her entire character. She's just, I don't know. She's useless. That's really truly the best way I can describe it.
But she knows French and she can translate French.
Yeah,
And she saw a little Nemo in French.
But she can't remember the name of one of the most successful Pixar films of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I just hate that whole, damsel in distress sort of, kind of, manipulative. I don't know. I just hate her.
That's fair.
I can't wait till she dies.
Damn.
I know.
Well, you got to wait like a season and a half for that. I'm pretty sure that's the very end of season 2, right?
It's about halfway through.
Is it?
Because it's right as when the tail section is joining up with the main group.
Oh, okay. My memory of when things happen on the show is so skewed, as we find out every week.
Well, good. That's plenty of time for you guys to listen to me go, ugh.
So I've been using Lostpedia to find the days that correspond to each episode. But other than that, I don't really want this to ever turn into a Lost trivia podcast. I want to keep it discussion based. So I'm trying not to read. Lostpedia is exhaustive in the amount of information. But I did find something that I thought was interesting because it creates a weird juxtaposition here. So after season 1 ended in 2005, it was discovered that whatever the case may be, episode 112 was the highest rated episode of season 1. Even more so than the pilot or the finale.
What was wrong with us?
Like rating in terms of viewing numbers?
Viewing numbers, but also in critic reviews.
Can I offer a theory?
Yes.
Yeah.
The opening scene of this episode is Kate and Sawyer coming on like a lovely waterfall area, and Josh Holloway takes off his shirt and eventually takes off her pants, and they go for a swim. And we have lots of shots of these very good-looking people swimming around in the water in states of undress. So
I forgot about that.
People like pretty people on television.
And I think critics were like pretty much at that point overwhelmingly male. So I imagine that much like Saeed, it was boner.
Again, I'm mentioning Josh Holloway. I don't want to sell him short because they give him more than his
lots
share
of shirtless time.
Uh-huh. So fast forward 20 years, and Reddit, the Lost subreddit, just recently took a vote, and whatever the case may be, was voted the worst episode of season 1, which is hard to disagree with, even with what we got coming up in this batch, because I'm not a fan of one of the upcoming episodes either. But this is a tough episode.
I think in a lot of ways it's very skippable, and like there's just and I think we're in a similar place about one of the upcoming ones, but yeah, there's just not a lot in this that I'd point to as like, oh, but you do have this one subplot, or you do have this one scene. I think it's just
it does nothing to further anything.
The flashbacks are dumb. It doesn't really lead to a satisfying place. Kate is unlikable, but not in an interesting way. We see her being manipulative, but not in a way that makes us feel for her and like the life she's led and her inability to trust people. It just kind of feels like she's being a jerk to, someone like Jack she has no reason to think will take advantage of her or that she can't trust.
Yeah.
But she still tries to like screw him out of the briefcase key.
Yeah, I agree.
Not literally screw him out of the key, though she does come close to that with Sawyer.
Well, just remember, Robert, that if anyone ever robs your bank, you do not give them the money because they'll just kill you and everyone in the bank anyway.
I actually started thinking about, like, you wouldn't, if you wanted to get into a safe deposit box illegally, this is such a stupid way to do it. You could just, and then I stopped and I was like, I probably shouldn't go that far on a podcast.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, no, we got to do the whole and then some stuff method so that we don't accidentally give our listeners, like, the ingredients to make napalm.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to episode 113, Hearts and Minds. This is a Boone and Shannon episode. Takes place entirely on day 24 on the island. So we're just skipping over day 23, just another uneventful day on the island.
Everybody went fishing. I don't know.
Or swimming.
Or stared out at the ocean.
I imagine that Kate spent the entirety of day 23 standing at the edge of the beach looking out at the horizon while clutching her dead ex-boyfriend's toy plane.
Yep.
This episode starts with another iWatch, which, like we discussed last episode, has become a running thing now that I had only noticed a handful of. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Robert. This time, the episode opens with Boone, who is not at all happy, much like we are not at all happy, about Saeed and Shannon's relationship.
Though his motive is a little different than ours.
A little bit. And I think Locke's method for handling poor Boone Carlisle's obsession with his stepsister is perfectly rational and reasonable and not at all fucking weird. All I wrote in our shared notes was Locke might not be that nice, guys.
He could have killed him.
He could have killed him.
So he is that. I mean, he's not that bad.
Instead, he drugs Boone with a hallucinogen after bashing him on the back of the head and giving him an opened head wound.
I love that idea.
And then just leaves him tied up in a way that there's a knife in front of him, but he can't reach it without pulling one of his wrists to the point that it seems like it's about to break. And then just kind of heads off and never comes back to check on him. Boone eventually does get free and come back to Locke later, but when we see Locke, he's just by a campfire, just hanging out.
Locke put a lot of fucking faith in this 21-year-old millionaire failed lifeguard.
No, I don't think he did. I don't think he did at all.
You think he wanted Boone to die in the
don't think
forest?
he gives a shit one way or the other.
There were multiple acceptable outcomes, I think, from Locke's perspective on this.
Yeah. I mean, he lives, he dies, who cares? Mm-hmm. It's one less little shithead.
Yeah. Well, the whole point is for Boone to learn a lesson, and therefore he's left alone, tied up with a head wound and some hallucinogens in his bloodstream, while there is some kind of monster roaming around the jungle that only Locke has seen up close. There are other people on the island who are murderous kidnappers, and also there are wild boar and polar bears.
Mm-hmm. Your point?
Dick move, Locke.
Yeah.
I'm on Locke's side with this one. Sorry.
I think that... yeah, geez, all the number of things out there that he was leaving the path of. Also the fact that, again, he doesn't seem to know what that pace that he's making will do. That when Boone's like, yeah, it showed me Shannon dying, Locke's like, oh, is that what it did? It's just like, okay.
Well, Locke is the king of the unhelpful answers, because before this, Boone asks him what he's making, and Locke's response is, oh, this is for later. Well, implying that he had already decided, I'm going to bash you over the head with the butt of my knife later and then rub this into the wound. But you don't need to know that yet.
Well, initially it was the if you don't stop asking stupid questions paste. And then it became the I'm going to convince you not to tell your sister paste. While he's making it, he does that classic TV thing where Boone asks a straightforward question like, what are we doing sitting here and staring at this hatch for a week? And Locke tells a story about Michelangelo staring at marble until he was ready to make the statue of David, which... How many of us, if we asked somebody a straightforward question and they started giving a lengthy monologue, wouldn't interrupt them halfway through to be like, no, sorry, close the Wikipedia page. What are we doing here?
I think I would have let him get through the monologue and then be like, oh, for fuck's sake, and just got up and gone back to the beach.
I might have left in the middle of it.
I don't think Locke would have noticed either.
No.
He just turns. He also keeps saying Michelangelo.
I did notice that. I wondered if that was just a weird pronunciation or the
first time I thought I heard it wrong, but he then proceeds to say Michelangelo repeatedly, multiple times.
Maybe that's an Italian variant. I don't know.
Maybe so. Maybe I am just uncultured swine. Probably I'm just uncultured swine.
I took Italian. I don't remember it being Michelangelo.
I played Assassin's Creed 2 recently. Can't remember on that.
And that's not how they pronounce the turtle's name.
Definitely not.
All right. So in flashbacks, oh boy, in flashbacks we find out that poor Shannon, poor beleaguered Shannon Rutherford, under so much duress all the time, living such a stressful life in Australia with her abusive boyfriend, calls Boone out of his relatively easy existence in California to come and rescue her. And then he gets there and she's like, LOL, just kidding.
Strategic hairbrush. Oh, there's a bruise on her forehead.
Look at that. So we find out that Boone's method for dealing with her stupid, sometimes abusive boyfriends is just to pay them to dump her. And he tries going to the police first with absolutely zero evidence to give them. This might be one of the most reasonable authority figures in television.
Though he is kind of a tool about it.
He is
Sorry,
kind of
we're
a
the police, not the dating police.
That's a great line, though. Like, when you love to be able to drop that on an annoying little douchebag like Boone.
Yes.
He tries to name drop his mother's matrimony business, and then he's like, I run a subsidiary, and I kind of wish we just had 30 seconds of the cops staring at him, blinking, and then being like, anyway.
That's in America. You're in Australia.
And?
But this is the first time we get a real overlap in characters. Now we see at the airport in Jack's first episode that Jen was directly behind him in line, but that makes sense. They're all at the airport. Here we see that just shortly before they get on the plane to Los Angeles, Sawyer was for some reason being booked at the same police station. Do we find out why in his next episode, or is that something they save for later? I don't remember.
I don't think we ever see the incident that led him there. I think it's referenced. Like, we find out why he's in trouble, but it's not related to what we see in his next flashback. But yeah, I was thinking about that. I think that is the first time we've actually had, outside of the airport or the plane, these characters cross paths previously.
And it's definitely not going to be the last time, because that's becomes something they lean into a lot more as the show goes on.
And I'm sure they had to be pretty careful about the rules that, there's no reason Boone would just remember one guy getting dragged past him yelling angrily in a police station. But, they can't have, Jack meet and have, a long and complex conversation with somebody and then be, completely oblivious to them previously.
Yeah. So we talked a lot last time about how big of a difference in B plots there was between the building of the golf course and whatever the A plot of that one was. What was the A plot of the golf course episode?
That was Saeed getting tortured.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Saeed.
And then flashing back to times he'd tortured other people.
Yeah. We get a pretty weird one here too, because we're dealing with the flashbacks. I'm not even talking about Boone's flashbacks here. I'm talking about poor Hurley. We're finding out about Boone's quote unquote tragic backstory. Poor Hurley just wants a fish. And in the very first episode, or back, I think it was the end of pilot part 2, he insulted Jin by not accepting his offering of a fish. And so
of a sea urchin.
And Jin hasn't offered him 1 cent, which seems reasonable to me. If I offered somebody a fish and they didn't take it, I'd assume they just don't like fish. But Hurley wants a fish. So he hounds Jin about it, who does not understand what he's saying, and then tries to fish on his own, and then gets fed up with it.
To Jin's very visible amusement.
And then he steps on a sea urchin and injures his foot. So Jin helps him back up on the beach. Hurley falls over and starts asking Jin, or demanding that Jin pee on his foot.
To cleanse the wound, I guess.
And then pointing at, because he knows Jin doesn't understand pee on my foot, pointing at Jin's dick and then his own foot,
I thought he was going to grab him at one point and just be like, yeah. Oh my God, that was the worst, most uncomfortable. I hated every minute of that.
And thankfully, the word no is something that Jin can express pretty clearly.
Yes.
I would love to know what Jin was thinking in that moment as Hurley was just pointing at his penis and then at his foot. Does Jin understand that, it's an old wives' tale that you're supposed to pee on a jellyfish sting? That it turns out all that thing that we've heard all of our lives is not at all. Yeah, it's just an old wives' tale. It's a myth. But Hurley doesn't know that. And Hurley thinks that it's the same thing as stepping on a sea urchin. So he's just screaming, dude, you have to pee on my foot. And pointedly pointing at Jin's dick.
You know, I actually would really like to watch, maybe without sound, the outtakes of recording that episode. I don't know how you get through that without breaking at least 406 times.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't.
I would also accept an episode from Jin's point of view. So there's an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia that the entire thing is just Frank Reynolds' point of view. It's Danny DeVito. All of his like internal monologue is voiceover from Danny DeVito, and it's just a day in the life of Frank and how fucking chaotic it is. I would love that from Jin's perspective, like just a day with these fucking idiots.
That he can't understand.
So we're just getting like a subtitled voiceover as he's like looking at the love triangle between Kate and Sawyer and Jack.
Is she sleeping with the doctor now, or the blonde guy, or both of them? I don't know.
Like, wow, that Michael guy is a terrible father, and also from Jin's perspective, a thief.
And now this...
I've still got this stupid cuff on my wrist.
Uh-huh.
And now this guy wants to grab my dick. What?
And my wife will not put her shoulders away. Yeah. Let's make that happen. Somebody please, like, bring Daniel Day Kim back for one episode and just find a way to CGI that in there.
I'm gonna write to him right now.
Which I think is the first time we've seen Jen in like 3 or 4 episodes, because I think he's completely absent from the trio that we did last week.
Yeah, and usually if we see him, it's doing something nearby, like within proximity of Sun in the caves. Like once they get to the caves, I think Jin's importance diminishes for a little while.
Yeah. Sun gets a great moment, I will say, in the last episode where she's still doing kind of pantomime to explain like what the plan she's finding do to Jack, and then Kate comes up to tell him about the case that has these guns in it, and Sun has to act like she doesn't understand, but you can see her eyes like widening and her just being like, I'm going to take my plants and leave now. I don't want to hear this and have to pretend I don't know what they're talking about.
So about midway through this episode, we get a scene where Jack goes to visit Locke on the beach, and they sit there and they have a conversation in just sitting on the beach, not in the shade. And I was watching this and it occurred to me, shouldn't everybody on this island be sunburned to shit by now?
Well, especially because, you know, Shannon has hogged all the suntan lotion.
And Sawyer has just bartered it all away, presumably to Shannon.
I think the makeup team does a pretty good job of kind of like reddening people's faces up a little bit, but yeah, like it should be just either we see them all hiding under the shade all the time, or they're just
They should look like leather belts.
Has anybody ever watched? Kara, you watch Better Call Saul, right? Mm-hmm. Remember that episode Bagman where they're going through the desert? There's an episode of the show where the main character winds up having to just haul cartel, like 2 bags full of cartel cash through a desert.
$7 million.
Yeah, and the makeup they put on Bob Odenkirk for that, of just after his trek through the desert, of just looking like his face is about to just completely calcify, is incredible. And it's, yeah, kind of what you'd think more of these people would be like at this point.
I know that's stretching realism just a little bit too much, but also don't put a scene between your 2 characters on the beach fully out in the sun if you don't want people thinking that.
Did we think about that stuff in 2004?
You're right. They hadn't invented skin cancer yet.
No, they hadn't.
Yeah.
And nobody cared if they had.
No, a sunburn was just a thing that you endured.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to make a comment on like 2004 fashion. So, you know, it's easy to show off in your crop top and your low-rise jeans, but that's also 2024 fashion now.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we're going to revisit Jungle Run watch. Last time we asked who's better at it. This time we're asking who's worse, Shannon or Boone? Who's got the worst Jungle Run?
I've got to be Shannon, because I think she's wearing high heels, or she moves like she is. Like, it's just a very, like, there's a reason the monster that Boone is hallucinating catches her first. And it's not just because that's, you know, his vision catharsis.
Kara, who's worse?
Shannon.
See, I'm going to be the outlier here. I think it's Boone because if you watch him, he is all limbs. He is all just like throwing his limbs forward. And I think that's why he's beating her, because she runs like a normal person and he's just throwing everything that he's got and propelling himself forward.
I've got to go back and watch that again.
Oh, please do. It's hilarious. The first time the monster appears and they have to take off, he just looks ridiculous.
In his defense, he is recently concussed.
True.
That he can run in a straight line at all is pretty impressive.
Yeah, especially that, considering he's concussed and hallucinating all of this.
Well, wait a minute. Isn't this in his hallucination? So he wouldn't necessarily be concussed in the hallucination?
Yeah, I don't know if you.
It's also entirely possible that he's not actually running. Like, he could just be lying on the ground, foaming at the mouth.
I mean, truthfully, yeah.
Kicking his legs and moving his arms like a sleeping puppy.
That I would have loved to have, like, Charlie or somebody just walk past and see Boone there. Just be like, you know what? I'm not going to ask.
You all right, buddy? All right. So we get our big fake out here where we think that the monster got Shannon. And I know Cara was so happy, but
you and Boone both.
In flashback, we find out that Shannon, the grifter, got grifted herself by her boyfriend, who ran off with the money that he was supposed to split with her, or that they were supposed to share.
And I feel so bad.
He seemed like such an honest sort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really upstanding guy. Also, like, noticeably, considerably, uncomfortably older than her. Did anyone else get that? Like, she's supposed to be 20, and this guy looked like he was in his 40s.
Oh, see, yeah. I thought he was like maybe 25, 27.
Oh, no, he did not look that young to me.
Australians can look weathered, though, so I don't know. It's hard to gauge.
That's true. He could have also been 21. I don't know.
There's a reason Hugh Jackman's been able to play an immortal for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Ooh, good point.
Yeah, Aussie don't crack. So we find out in flashback that they are a little bit more than just stepbrother and stepsister. Also, this episode confirms that they are step siblings.
Yeah, that had not been alluded to up to that point.
Right. We had been led to believe up to this episode, they were blood brother and sister. But no, their parents married each other. Shannon's dad died.
Shannon's dad married Boone's mom and died at some point. We find out in season 2 how that happened.
Yeah, and so Boone's mother wouldn't give Shannon any of her father's money, which led to her grifting. It doesn't matter because they fucking.
Yeah, that after she comes to Boone's hotel room and is like, "You've always been in love with me," and starts kissing him, and Boone, looking appropriately uncomfortable about it for the first 5 seconds, then kind of goes back into it. And yeah.
I dubbed this note, "It's okay, she's my stepsister, Lost Edition."
I'm going to actually go out on a limb a little bit here about the character of Shannon and what this episode could have represented. Because I do agree, as executed, like as she exists in the show that ended up getting made, yeah, she's kind of a complete flop of a character. The idea of her as someone who her uselessness is like a defense mechanism, that it's something she puts on to draw people in and manipulate them, had a lot of potential, and honestly could have been really interesting in her relationship with Saeed. That, like I was saying it a minute ago, but really, if you were trying to pick out the most useful person on the island to develop a bond with, you'd probably pick him. And so, yeah, to have her be someone who just everyone's like, oh, she's just a ditz, she's useless, whatever, try to not let her run into a tree. But she's actually one of the savviest operators who's just using that to manipulate things to her advantage. Could have been really interesting, especially because it doesn't even have to be malicious. It can just be sort of her way of self-preservation. That, the guys like that we're seeing this from Boone's point of view, so everything she's doing seems pretty scummy, but it's like, yeah, if she really did get completely cut off and is just kind of, has never really had to look out for herself, and this is just how she does it, they could have done a lot of interesting stuff with that. And I'm kind of bummed out that after this episode, we never really see that aspect of her, and they just they play her relationship with Saeed completely straight, that they really are just, having, they develop passionate feelings for each other. And yeah, I wish we could have gotten to see that version of her, because I think that could have been really interesting.
Femme fatale Shannon.
Yeah.
Would that have moved the needle for you, character?
Well, it's in the same way that, like, Sawyer is, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just, you know, a lot of these characters we meet, and they're really insufferable in their first meeting. And one of the great things the show does is peel it back. And Shannon, nothing ever gets peeled back. She really is just...
Well, lots of things get peeled off.
You know, I won't rule out the possibility that could have made a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, give me a little more to go on instead of just that.
A little more meat on that bone. The episode, I actually wasn't, you know what? We're just going to pretend I meant that intentionally. The episode ending does give me like one of the most impressive shots, like single shots that we've seen up to this episode in this run, which is there's a shot of Boone in the foreground with light on his face. And it is shot and lit in such a way that you think that maybe like he's sitting on the beach or something. Because this is right after he thinks Shannon died. And then in the background, Shannon turns on a light and it reveals that he's sitting in the hotel room post-coitus, looking depressed about it. And I was like, damn, that was a well done reveal.
Even in this batch of episodes, which is not my favorite run, there are a lot of just really beautiful compositions and like fun things they're doing on the production side that like this show really always did just have such a great team putting that stuff together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hate to tell you guys this, but this episode, Boone's only flashback episode, because he's gonna be dead in a few episodes.
Yay.
Shannon, you'll have to wait a little bit longer on. I think she gets another one at some point. She gets one flashback episode in the second season.
Yeah, but this, pour one out for our buddy Boone Carlisle. He's not dead yet, but
he's on the path.
He's on the path, and his flashback episodes are over. All right, moving on.
Can I mention one thing I love about the episode?
Yes.
When Boone tries to go up to Saeed and kind of tough talk him about seeing Shannon, and Naveen Andrews just has this adorable smile on his face the whole time that is clearly communicating, I'm smiling because laughing in your face would probably be a little bit rude, but just is not even pretending to be slightly intimidated by Boone trying to give him the stay away from my sister talk.
And Locke even lampshades that later, and like shortly after when he's walking through the woods with Boone, he's like, "You don't want to pick a fight with Saeed. Don't do that, bud." All right, so we're gonna skip another day on the island, and we're gonna go to episode 114 special, which takes place over days 26 and 27. And this is a Michael episode primarily, with a little bit of Walt thrown in there as well, by virtue of the fact that we're finding out the nature of their very stressed relationship, and how horrible Michael's ex-girlfriend and Walt's mother was.
I don't know if bad mom watch quite applies here, because she seems like she was good to her son, but man, terrible partner watch.
Yeah. So the episode starts with another eye close-up. This time it's Michael's, and we get the another instance of Michael running around screaming, "Walt!" Which I'm going to bring up. I want to get some audience interactiveness going on here. After this episode, maybe it's something we'll continue to do. Maybe it's just this one-time thing. I'll bring it up at the end of the episode. But we also, here at the beginning, when Michael finds where Walt ran off to, we get this very weird setup and shot that I feel like starts to introduce the cult of Locke. We see that Locke is trying to teach Walt how to throw a knife, while Boone just stands there nearby looking menacing, because his hallucination has helped him get over his sister completely.
And he became a badass.
And he somehow
in his own mind.
Yeah, exactly. So we're starting to see like the weird influence of John Locke and how he's starting to gather people, even though in very short order he's no longer going to have a cult. One of those people is going to die, and the other one's going to get kidnapped and disappear from the show forever.
Well, I think it's just the effect that I think Charlie has a conversation with Jack in the previous episode where he says, if there's, no offense, Jack, but if there was one person I thought was going to save us all, it would be John Locke. He's he constantly seems to know what he's doing on the island, and that's an appealing quality for these people.
It is, especially when you consider that Jack is ostensibly their leader and frequently has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
I would join the cult of Locke.
I know you would. And we need to talk about that.
No, we
very
don't.
concerning for me.
No.
Join the cult. They have knives.
Lots of them. Well, I mean, you could also join the cult of Jack because they've got a bunch of guns now.
And drugs. Jack does have all the drugs.
He does.
But Locke could make hallucinogens out of
true.
squishing something in a fruit. I don't know.
Yeah, but Jack can just give you the drugs and you can take them.
But Jack's a goody-goody. He wouldn't.
Locke has to bash you over the head and rub the drugs into your head wound.
Works for me.
And we don't need to talk about whether this makes it more or less appealing, but he is really into tying his followers up for these spiritual experiences.
Yeah. Oh, wow. The look on Kara's face right now tells me she might be into getting tied up and hallucinating by
Then beat in the head.
yeah, by John Locke. We'll unpack that in a future episode. Let's say the next Locke episode. Let's just do that one by itself. No other block of episodes, just so we can try to unpack what's going on here. I brought up in the last episode that I've really been fascinated by trying to keep up with the time frames of these flashbacks, which sometimes is pretty easy and inconsequential. Like, we don't really need to know when Kate broke into that safety deposit box. Don't really... well, it's within a month. Like, Boone's flashback happens within like a week of them landing on the island. But the flashback for Special here takes place. The flashbacks take place between 1994 and 2004.
It's the span of Walt's life to this point, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from finding out she's pregnant in late 93 or sometime early 94, to his birth, to the accident, to what's her name just continuing to be the worst up until her death.
Susan, I think?
Susan, yes, thank you. Played by an actress who looks freakishly like, oh my goodness, she was on Daredevil, and oh my, I'm wasting air.
You're not talking about Karen. The actress is, I think, Tamlin Tamita is her name.
Yeah.
Tamara, yeah. She was also in Bones, if you watched that show.
She has a great bit in a one scene in the movie Serenity as like a hallucination instructor that in River Tam's class.
Okay, that's why I remember that. I'm frantically IMDbing to see. I feel bad about forgetting this actress's name, and now I'm just killing Rosario Dawson. Jesus fuck.
Oh, okay. Wow, I wasn't gonna go there. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, listeners.
No, she's a tremendously likable actress, is the thing, and so after my first watch, I had a memory of her being a fairly nice, likable character. And she's like, oh, it's sad that her and Michael didn't work out, but they didn't make her too awful about it. And then watching it again, I'm just like, oh, she's terrible.
Yeah.
Like, it is constantly just, oh, I'm taking this job, just get some time apart. And then we find out that she's entering into a romantic relationship with the boss who's giving her that job. And she's already planning to like take take Walt. And when Michael starts to object and is like, you can't just, completely take my son out of my life. She's like, well, you're unemployed, so the court would side with me. She immediately lays that card down. It's just like, that's...
Well, right from the jump, she lied to him because the episode leads us to believe that she is presenting this idea to him as just that. Like, oh, it's an offer that I've been given. And then we find out very quickly she's already accepted. She's just hoping that Michael would be on board with it.
Yeah, it's... very, very unlikable character, but yeah, puts Michael in a... You also see why Michael doesn't want to make her the bad guy in the way he talks to Walt and the way he frames being out of his life.
Which, I mean, honestly, as you could do if you were in that position, I don't think anybody would blame him if he, just dogged on her all the time, but... he's not that kind of person. And I think that's admirable in Michael.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to have to tell a 10-year-old that his mom's a cunt.
Or just to tell, that his stepdad didn't want him. And like the whole reason I think honestly, one of the purely nicest things that anybody on this show does in the first season is when Michael finally gives Walt the collection of letters and things that he'd sent him that his mom had never shown him. And Walt quite reasonably asked, why didn't she ever show me this? And Michael goes, I don't know, but she didn't throw them away, so she must have wanted you to have them, which is just
Yeah.
Like, you did not have to do that.
No.
But that's just such a, like...
Well, he also makes himself the bad guy when he's talking to Walt by saying, well, Brian didn't want to give you up, but I'm your father. So even though, like, a flashback before, Brian's like, take this fucking kid. I don't want it.
Well, he didn't want him because he's weird and creepy and shit happens.
He can summon birds.
Fly in the windows.
Yeah. So we said that, Boone is, as part of his newly formed cult of Locke, he's standing there like he's some kind of enforcer. And to his credit, when Michael pulls a knife on Locke, Boone tackles him and then immediately gets fucking dunked on because even Michael can fight better than Boone can.
I think Walt can fight better than Boone can.
What is Boone good at? We're going to spend this whole episode dunking on Boone. What the fuck is he good at? Because we're not given any reason to believe Michael, who was in a catastrophic car accident and had to spend a year in physical therapy, Michael's able to beat the shit out of Boone.
I mean, he's in construction, so he's probably in pretty good shape. And I mean, also Harold Perrineau has, some solid arms on him. But yeah, Boone is good at. I started that sentence seeing if I could just come up with something by the end, and it's
fucking his sister.
Yeah.
That's got to be it.
Even Locke, in the previous episode, when everyone's like, "Hey, where's Boone? Wasn't he with you?" And one of the excuses Locke gives is, "Well, I gave him a chance to hunt a boar on his own." And I think Saeed asks, "Oh, do you think we'll catch one?" And Locke just immediately goes, "No."
I love that.
Well, the very next note that I took, we've already touched on it, but let's touch on it some more. Walt's mom is the fucking worst. Took away Michael's parental rights. She
refused to marry him, but does marry the guy that gives her the job in the law firm.
Mm-hmm. Moves their child halfway across the world
to Amsterdam, then Rome, then Australia.
Yep. We find out later from Brian, talked Brian into adopting Walt. He never actually wanted to do that.
Which, of course, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because wouldn't that necessitate Michael giving up his parental rights, like terminating his parental rights?
I think that's what they're going for, the scene in the hospital where she visits him and says, "I want Brian to adopt," and that's why Michael reacts so strongly, like he's being asked to essentially relinquish all.
And so we have to assume that he did do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
She pays for his medical bills just so that he will be more amenable to her taking Walt away from him completely. And then she has the audacity to get a blood disease and die.
Bitch.
Leaving him in the care of Brian, who is not much fucking better. He might be the world's worst stepdad.
Literally the day after she died, like he says, she died yesterday. He got on a plane and flew to
New York.
Yeah, New York, where Michael's living, to get rid of Walt. Like that is his immediate. Like as soon as
I don't even think he waited a whole day.
For a flight that long, he must have literally as they were pulling the sheet over her body, he must have been calling the airport to be like, I need a ticket to get to.
And left Walt with his nanny.
The classic TV grab somebody by the lapels and slam them against a wall in a rage has never felt more justified than when Michael does that to him.
Yeah, just wow, shitty parenting.
Great moment where it does cost him his dog because when he's like Michael's trying to comfort Walt about not being with Brian, and was like, well, you can keep your dog, and Walt points out that Vincent is Brian's dog, and Michael just immediately goes, Brian said you could have him.
The best part is there's just the tiniest hint of a pause there where Michael formulates and executes this plan to fuck over this person who stole his girlfriend and his son one last time by stealing his dog. Now, normally in a situation where a man steals another man's dog, I'd be on the side of the person who had their dog stolen. But no, fuck you, guy. Brian.
Brian's a bad guy and Vincent's a good boy who deserves better.
Exactly.
If you don't want to take care of that kid, you can't take care of the dog.
Exactly. So the last takeaway from this episode is we've got every episode that we've gotten so far and every character flashback we've gotten has established, wow, all of these people have really tragic, harrowing backstories. We all feel terrible for them.
Not Boone.
No, well, not Boone, and not really Kate, and only sort of Sawyer and
Kind
Charlie.
of Jack.
Kind of Jack.
They all got there with baggage. Let's say they've all got baggage.
There you
Most
go.
of it's tragic, but it's
Yeah.
all baggage of one form or another.
I think this episode firmly establishes Michaels as the most tragic of backstories. All he wanted to do was marry the love of his life and raise their kids together. Instead, she steals his son, runs away, marries another dude. He gets hit by a car, has to go through a year of rehab, finds out she died, and has to take in his kid that he does not know and has zero experience parenting.
And at this point, the kid has, just no reason to feel anything towards him emotionally at all. And, from Walt's perspective, Michael just never gave a crap about him.
Yeah, it really recontextualizes a lot of earlier scenes in the season.
Yeah.
Michael, early contender for most tragic character on the show, and I'm including John Locke in there, knowing the full extent of what we know or come to find out about Locke.
Honestly, I'm inclined to give it to Michael because Locke does have has some grace, some redemption ahead for him. Like that his story does not have a happy ending. It does not have he's just got so much lower to go from where he is right now. And yeah, oh man, it's some brutal stuff waiting for him.
Yep. So we're going to move on to the last episode of this batch that we watched, episode 115, Homecoming. It's a Charlie flashback episode, and it picks up where the last one left off with Claire wandering out of the jungle, and it takes place over days 27 through 29. And very quickly, we are reintroduced to everyone's favorite crew's cousin. Ethan comes back, now a Bola master, and also a Terminator, it would seem. The fact that he was able to not only hit Jin, but also knock him out using the most primitive of weapons is impressive. And then the fact that he lifts Charlie a full 2 inches off the ground to pin him against a tree is even more impressive.
Really kind of crazy given that we eventually learned that, the others aren't they don't have ninja training or anything going on. They're living in their, in their cabins on the other side of the island.
in a lot more comfort than the Islanders are. They have running water and AC and heat, and I think they have televisions. I know they have record players. It is a weird early thing here that we're kind of given the impression that the others might be in some way superhuman.
Yeah, that he literally just holds Charlie off the ground by his neck while delivering a whole monologue. And when he sets him down, does not seem like it's because he's tired.
No. To the writer's credit and William Mapother's credit, that's a very scary monologue he gives. I would have been intimidated. But yeah, it'll be a while before we find out that the others are just a bunch of weirdo scientists.
We didn't mention at the end of the last episode that Claire does come back.
Yes, yeah. Claire wanders out of the jungle, and she's brought back to camp. She's still pregnant, but surprise, she has amnesia. One of the easiest TV cliches there is.
I mentioned that whatever the case may be has one of the show's go-to weaknesses of resolve a mystery with another mystery. This has another weakness of transparent plot mechanics to keep the writers from having to give concrete answers. Mm-hmm. They didn't want to talk about where Claire had been, so she just can't remember it. Mm-hmm. Very annoying because the answer ends up being she was drugged while in captivity. Mm-hmm. So they really could have just the idea of her having complete amnesia all the way back to before the crash is wildly unnecessary. She could have just been I don't remember. They gave me something. Everything's a blur. I have images, especially because her having there's a lot of potential drama in the last thing she remembers being going to get on a plane, and now she's surrounded by people who claim they know her and talk about all this stuff happening. We don't really get any of that.
No, ultimately, her not being able to remember anything for the 26 previous days is inconsequential. But it does give us Charlie's added backstory which I think reaffirms my opinion that the writers didn't think they were going to have to ever give Charlie a second flashback episode, because he fights heroin withdrawals so that he can try to grift a poor young woman and ends up selling copiers and failing on his first day.
By barfing on the plate.
He shows more withdrawal symptoms in these flashbacks than he does on the island. But it gives us another neat little Easter egg, because the copiers, their numbers, their product numbers, whatever, are 815. Just like the safety deposit box, just like the flight. So we're getting some more fun with the numbers. I think, Robert, was it you or was it Cara that introduced the idea of the best island tackle?
I think it was Cara, because when they try to capture Ethan in the jungle, he's pinning Claire to the ground and Jack tackles him off of her and they both go flying. I'm assuming this was both stunt performers, but they make it seem like it's like a hit from a Super Bowl linebacker.
Right. And this is not long after Boone did the running tackle to Michael. So there's a lot of running tackles on this show.
Well, back in Sun's first episode, we got two in quick succession, because Jen tackles Michael on the beach and starts beating the crap out of him. And then Saeed hits him so hard that they both go flying like 4 feet into the ocean.
Just for style points, I'm going to give early contender for best jungle tackle to Jack.
Oh, yeah.
I still got to give it up to Saeed, because that's like, after you've seen Michael take a horrific beating, and that tackle still feels like the hardest hit in that whole sequence.
Didn't write a whole lot about this episode. This B plot is dog shit, you guys.
It's
the flashback structure of, oh no, Charlie is going through heroin withdrawals, and it seems like something they could have written for Sawyer. Like, oh, you need to buddy up to this girl and get in her good graces so you can get into her house and steal something from her worth selling. That's a Sawyer plot. And maybe even to a lesser extent, maybe a Kate plot.
Yeah.
But that's not a Charlie plot.
Like, Charlie does not seem like he's a drug addict, and drug addicts, are not particularly scrupulous in how they, support their habit. But yeah, we don't really get an indicator that, he was somebody who had to work particularly hard to get drugs. Like, he was a modestly successful musician. He either had the money to get them or knew people who did. This is one that I think suffers. It's the first one in the season, and really one of the few in the series where I look at it and I'm just like, they really picked the wrong character for the flashbacks, because what you've got with the threat Ethan presents as trying to get Claire back and being willing to kill other survivors until he does, it's like the first time you've had like a specific threat to the entire community. And naturally the people who are in charge of responding to that are Jack, Locke, and Saeed, because they've got these relevant skill sets. But it's Charlie's episode, so he's just kind of constantly got to be in the background being like, well, what about this? Can I do something? And has to be told, no, you're not helpful here.
Yeah. I would almost venture to say this could have been an Ethan episode. Considering how it ends, and considering that Claire doesn't remember anything that happened, this would have been a really good episode and a really good fake out if we saw what happened to Claire through Ethan's perspective, if we found out a little bit more about Ethan, and then at the episode, he fucking dies. Because, Robert, you brought up the moral quandary idea of is anything that Kate did really so bad that you question her character? Everything we've been given about Ethan so far is terrible. So if this were an opportunity to go, well, he kidnapped a woman after ingratiating himself into the camp and tried to kill Charlie, but he was doing something, could have been really interesting. And but they don't know that, so he's dead now.
Yeah, I don't think they had enough nailed down about the others yet to be comfortable doing that. It would have been interesting. I'm trying to think the first time we have a non-traditional flashback like that. We eventually, I know we get one for Ben, somewhere in season 4 or 5. And we get Juliet's once we start meeting her. But yeah, I admit I was thinking, because I was like, okay, Jack and Saeed had both fairly recently had flashback episodes, so it would have been weird to go back to that well again. maybe they could have done I think, like you said, Sawyer might have been interesting to have him be like the second one. Maybe Locke, but again, he's got to have his own episode. So it really could have just been like Charlie was just sort of the one who came up on the board, who didn't, like, when everybody else was tied there. But yeah, Ethan's death feels like such a waste to me. That, again, similar to Claire's amnesia, he had to die because, well, if they captured him, then they would have to answer questions that they weren't ready for yet. I still wish it had been something like they have to kill him because he's just too difficult to subdue, or when they've got him, he like runs off a cliff or something rather than be taken alive.
Right.
Just to have like when he's subdued on his knees, unarmed, Charlie just blows him away, murders him, like by any legal definition of the word. Yeah, it's both unsatisfying and weird because they don't really get into the question of Charlie killing an unarmed and defenseless man.
And even like when Jack brings it up, even Charlie is like, well, do you really think that Ethan would have told us anything?
And it's like, I mean, I sure would have liked to try.
Yeah. And I get it. If a dude kidnapped the girl that I was interested in, the pregnant girl that I was interested in, and hung me up to die, I'd probably be pretty inclined to shoot him several times as well. But we don't really get any sort of payoff to Charlie's emotional state with that.
I think there's an episode a couple of ways down where he starts dealing with a little bit of PTSD for it, and Saeed has to talk to him about it. But yeah, it's really weird at the end of the episode that Claire comes up to him and starts to approach him again, as if this decision has made him seem like he's, like he is a hitman, that he is a protector, and not, oh dear God, this dude just killed a man. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't. Yeah.
Well, this comes just 1 week after I said, the end of Jack and Ethan's first fight, I thought was pretty realistic. Here's a guy who is a doctor and has no sort of combat experience whatsoever, getting his ass handed to him by a guy who clearly knows how to fight. No, it's like you pointed out. I didn't remember this rematch even happening, Robert. But Jack turns the tables pretty damn quickly. And it's also, I think, a bit of character derailment for Ethan, who is at this point presented as like a superhuman monster.
Like he sneaks onto the beach and doesn't just kill one of the I think Steve is the guy.
Yeah,
Steve. He doesn't just kill him. He breaks, I think, all the bones in his arms and all of his fingers. Like, he murders that guy hard. And yeah, then suddenly Jack can just beat him in a one-on-one fist fight.
Well, he also didn't stop and consider that they might try to set a trap for him.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Claire's in the jungle. Perfect. Like,
I know that he doesn't know that Jack has discovered a cache of guns, and so they have firearms to their advantage. But even still, he has to anticipate, okay, they've got jungle explorer guy, they've got former special forces guy.
Like, he's been there long enough to know who they have and what their abilities are.
Mm-hmm. Are we supposed to assume that he's just so blinded by we have to have Claire that he throws caution to, I don't know.
I mean, he basically falls for the equivalent of like a box propped up on a stick that has Claire written on the side and arrows pointing down.
It's also, with the way that it's shot, it's also really unclear what their plan was, because we see that they're all like hiding up in trees, ready to spring this trap. But when Ethan actually tackles Claire, Jack's the first one there, and it takes everyone else a while. It's not like they all just descend on them. Everyone has to run at them from different angles.
Which, again, very weird to me that given how they've established Ethan as such a physical threat, why not have a sequence where like he kicks Jack away and like holds his own with Saeed, and it takes like 3 guys to mob him to the ground. Like,
it's what they would have done today, for sure.
He could lose, but still look like, oh my gosh, how strong is this guy that he can just fight off all of these figures? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I like this episode a lot on original airing. I remember thinking that like, oh, getting Jack versus Ethan round 2 was cool, but it's really hard not to see a lot of wasted potential in here. Another thing that bugs me is this is the first time that the clear division between the characters, the people we're focusing on, and all of these extras in the background feels like a real issue, because what do all the people in the background know about Ethan? Do they know that there was a guy among them who came from somewhere else on the island? Do they know that he kidnapped 2 people? Like when a corpse is being carried up the beach to get buried, do they understand who killed him and why? Like, you know, when the like Locke sets up like his perimeter, what has he told? It's really weird that we have scenes of Jack, Saeed, and Locke all talking about what to do, but we don't have a scene where any of them like gather everybody around and like, all right, here's the problem. We all need to know this is happening.
Well, we also get the scene where Jack is handing out guns. He gives a gun to Sawyer, and then Sawyer in turn gives a gun to Kate. And there are people milling about on the island, and no one is like, wait, where the fuck did you guys get a bunch of guns from? Yeah, it's weird, and it's the beginning of what's going to be an ongoing problem of what are the background people doing? What do they know? Up to the point where, is it the end of the 5th season or early into the 6th season where a bunch of mercenaries just show up and murder all of the other islanders so that we can get our main cast together?
Early, like end of season 4, early season 5.
Okay,
I think where
right.
that
So I was off by quite a bit. But yeah, at some point they just straight up murder the rest of the survivors so that we can focus on the main characters.
It's frustrating to me that it felt like there was an opportunity here because, you know, we've had the story of this community building itself. They get food, they find shelter, they do all those things. And now they've got an external threat. And instead of it being a story of, okay, how do you manage the response to this and deal with what different people want to do? Because, you know, maybe there would be some background extras who are like, I don't want to be the next guy who gets all my limbs broken. Let's give him Claire back.
Yeah.
So it seems a lot of missed opportunities is kind of what I look at with this episode now. Like Ethan dies after such a great villain introduction. Claire gets kind of reset as a character. Jack, like the death of Ethan is just overall not. I mean, it's the shot is really cool. Like that look over Claire's shoulder to see Ethan climbing out of the tree towards her is another really great horror image from the show. But yeah, man, this one, whatever the case may be, is just kind of dumb. But this one, I can't stop seeing what really could have been awesome about it.
Well, with all that said, whatever the case may be, it works out well for Charlie because murdering her attacker seems to be a real panty dropper for Claire. Cara, is a man murdering another man like a turn on for you? Would that be the thing that you're like, okay, I get you. Thank you, Charlie.
No, I don't think that would do it for me.
I don't know about murder, but I mean, your husband did spend a big chunk of his career doing violence to other men. So
That's true.
I mean,
that's true.
He was a wrestler,
Yeah.
listeners.
Yes.
David
yes.
Two Dogs Hayes, who y'all may know is the host emeritus of This Is a Work.
Yeah, important distinction there. He was a professional wrestler. When you say that he performed violent acts on other men.
Oh, it could be in the mafia. Who knows?
Yeah. So yeah, that's our batch of episodes. After spending last week talking about how great that 3-episode run was, to come into this one, and it's got some real highs and real lows this week.
I think Michael's episode is really good. I think that's a great. But yeah,
of the 4 of them, yeah, Michael's, and then Boone's, which I think says something about the other 2 episodes. That Boone's one and only flashback episode is better than Kate's and Charlie's second episodes.
I found myself thinking about the X-Files, which was before Lost was kind of the go-to for like the sort of serialized mystery weirdness show. And the thing about X-Files is they have the division between kind of your monster of the week episodes and then your mythology episodes where Mulder and Scully find someone who's got some real information about the big government conspiracy, and that person always dies or turned out to have been a plant or gets abducted. And, people look back and they're like, the Monster of the Week stuff is good, but it is so obvious that they had no idea where they were going with any of these episodes. And I'm grateful, I will say, that Lost does eventually dial in. Yeah, that if the entire run of the show had been stuff like that of just constantly, oh, well, too bad Ethan won't get, this guy won't get to tell you where the others are. Too bad, she was in their camp but doesn't remember. Yeah, I would not have the fond memories of the show that I do if they had not eventually gotten to the fireworks factory.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, I want to say just 2 more quick things. Like I alluded to earlier, I'd like to get some audience participation going, just to see if our listeners want to get interactive. I want to hear your Michael Screaming Walt impressions. It's become such a meme of the show of just Michael running around the island screaming Walt. Send me an audio clip, send me a video, email them to david.longwalk@gmail.com. And if I get enough of them, I'll play them on future episodes so that everyone can hear your Walt impression, or your Michael screaming Walt impressions, and we can pick a winner. The other thing is starting to expand on an idea that Robert had about all the other actors on this show and what they were doing around this time, other movies that they were in and TV shows and such. Well, after we watched the episodes together, Friday night, we're recording on a Sunday. We watched them 2 nights ago. I went home and turned on TV and do what I normally do around this time of year, which is put on a horror movie. And I went, oh, I never saw The Hills Have Eyes. It's the 2006 remake. I'll put this on. And within 5 minutes, holy shit, there's Emily DeRavin. There's Claire. So it seemed kind of ironic. But yeah, that's something I'd like to do as we go forward.
How'd you like it?
Oh, God, no. Don't. No. If you're listening to this and you've never seen The Hills Have Eyes remake, don't watch it.
Oh.
Dog shit. Like, I was viscerally upset by the movie, and I've got a very strong threshold for fucked up shit.
Isn't the male lead in that the guy from, he was Pyro in the X-Men movies?
Aaron Stanford.
Yeah.
Good cast. Fucked up movie. I say that as somebody who loves fucked up movies. The Hills Have Eyes, I've never seen the original, but...
Is that Wes Craven?
I think so.
I'd heard that. I'd heard that it was just all kinds of fucked up, and you know what? I don't need that in my life.
No.
I like horror, but not like that.
Yeah, no, I like horror. I don't like really viscerally fucked up horror. We did a whole our very first episode of Long Walk Talks was about horror extremes, and the Hills Have Eyes remake could have been on there. So take this as a warning, listeners.
I think it was in that period of like the mid 2000s, like not even full on torture porn, but just kind of like remake horror movies and just add like so much over the top suffering.
Well, the director is Alexandra Aja, who also did High Tension, which I think is one of the worst horror movies and just one of the worst movies ever made. Again, I think they're still streaming on YouTube. Find our first 2 episodes of Long Walk Talks, where we spent a lot of time talking about High Tension, and I absolutely hated it. Co-host Stan Wilson Lee absolutely loved it.
And that tells you everything you need to know.
But just because Claire's in it, you don't need to see that. If you want to see something Emily DeRavin is in, go watch the movie Brick.
That was honestly going to be my pick when we talked about her. Cara, have you?
No.
So Rian Johnson, who did The Last Jedi, Looper, Poker Face, the Knives Out movies, his first feature film is a gumshoe noir set in a high school. Mm-hmm. So it's
starring a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Emily DeRavin, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt is basically a high school private eye, and it's played completely straight. Mm-hmm. Like he's looking into a mystery that involves murder and drugs and all this stuff, but everybody talks like they're in like a Marlowe novel. Like everybody's just got like the most hard-boiled, head down stuff. So, and they're all high schoolers, but they play the dynamic. So like the cop who's giving the detective a hard time is the principal. He's got like the smart kid from science class is like his CSI connection. It's just, oh my gosh, so much.
The local drug pen is just the local rich kid who runs shit out of his basement.
Yeah, the great femme fatale.
So I need to see this one.
You would like this one a lot.
Okay.
And
I still remember one of the great call outs in a fight is when he goes to where the local stoners hang out behind a restaurant, and he needs to shake him down for information, and they try to stand up to him, and he shoves one of them away and goes, "I got all 5 senses and a full night's sleep behind me, which makes me 6 up on all of you." And I'm just like, that's a good line.
Yeah, and as Cara knows this, but since I quit smoking, I've gotten into collecting boutique DVDs and Blu-rays, collector's edition type shit. And I have Kino Lorber is releasing a 4K version of Brick that I have on pre-order. So Cara, we'll have to watch it together because it's fantastic.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Much better Emily DeRavin, whatever film to watch.
She's not in it a lot, but she has a lot of impact in what she does.
Yeah, her character is very important to it. Robert, we're going to wrap up there, but if people want to reach out to you online or follow you online, where can they do that at?
I'm on the site formerly known as Twitter. I have an Instagram profile. It's not seeing a lot of activity, but yeah, RedbeardRob17. Wrestling, occasional politics stuff, and then Simpsons memes are sort of what I do on there.
Nice. Cara, what about you? If people want to follow you online?
Well, I have an Instagram presence under @HistoryNerd1861, but I mostly just follow people and look at their shit.
Lurk. Yeah. Since promoting this show, I've gotten a lot more into posting shit on Instagram. So if you want to follow me online, the best place to do that is on Instagram @DBHensley. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us. To see more of our original work or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming, you can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show or any of the shows on the Long Walk Podcast Network, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on.